In this video, we start talking about Arnold Standard Surface Shader, and it will take a few lessons to learn about all of its aspects. We are using ACES as the color manager, so make sure to set up your config file correctly. So let's create a new Arnold Standard Surface Shader from the Material Manager, Create menu, Arnold Surface, and add a Standard Surface Shader. Now run the IPR and assign the shader to the shader ball. Middle click on the standard surface shader and open up its network editor. I have hidden the shader list and the material preview. Now select the standard surface shader node to view its parameters. The standard surface shader is a physically based shader capable of producing many types of materials, including plastic, glass, metals, fabrics, liquids, skin, and everything in between. It has a diffuse or a base layer, a specular layer, a transmission or a refraction layer, and also subsurface, coat, sheen, thin film, emission, and bunch of other components. In this lesson, we take a look at the base parameters, but before that, the shader comes with a few handy presets like plastic, glass, and metal, which can be a good starting point. For now, let's get back to the plastic preset, which is the default one. If you are coming from other render engines, you probably know the base section of the material as diffuse. In Arnold, it is called base. A more scientific explanation is that the base color and weight set how bright the surface is when lit directly with a white light source. So consider the base as the diffuse portion of your shader. So if I set the base weight to 0, the shader does not have any base contribution anymore, and we only see the specular reflections, and that is because the specular weight is set to 1 still. If we zero that out, we get a completely black surface that absorbs all the incoming light. Let's set the base weight to 1 to get our diffuse or base contribution back. And we can set the specular weight to 0 for now, so we only deal with the base color. Base color sets the base or diffuse color. Let's try a few other colors. We can use a texture to control the base color, so let's add an image node and load this parquet texture and connect it to the base color. Now this texture determines the base color of the shader. For now, let's disconnect this image by clicking on the connection, and let's change the base color to white again. As a rule of thumb, never use 100% white or black color as your base color, especially if you are not in the ACES workflow. The whitest I normally go is an RGB value of around 235 to 140, and the darkest is something like 40 to 60. Those absolutely black and white colors exist rarely in nature, so keeping your base color in a realistic range is a must. Even if you are making like a snow material, which is the whitest of whites, you don't need to use a base color higher than 240. For a white wall, that value can be simply less than 200, and so on. Even though ACES gives you a bit more flexibility in the higher ranges and allows you to use brighter values without a considerable penalty. For now, let's set the white color to around 240. Diffuse roughness controls how rough or smooth the surface is. For a surface like plastic, you need to use a lower value, and for a surface like sand or concrete, you would need a higher diffuse roughness. Next, we have this metalness parameter, which increasing it will make the surface behave more and more like metal. At 1, we have a shader that can be defined as metal. When you use this metalness parameter to create a metal shader, you need to set the specular weight to 1 as well. Now we have a physically accurate metal shader. When metalness is set to 1, to control the color of the metal or the appearance of the metal, you can use the base color and the specular color. Base color controls the color of the metal surface for the parallel faces to the viewing direction, and specular color controls the color of the edge tint or the color of the perpendicular faces to the viewing direction. For a gold shader, for example, we can use a light yellow color as the base color. and a less saturated, brighter version of the same color for the specular color. If you wanted something more like copper, you would use a more orangish, brownish color. And again, a less saturated version of the same color for the specular color. If I change the specular color to something like an electric pink, you see how the specular color only controls the edge tint of the shader. Now the cool thing is we get a bunch of metal presets just underneath the metalness parameter, like aluminum, copper, gold, iron, platinum, silver, and so on. Let's use the copper preset for now. After you set any preset, you can change and adjust your preset by modifying the base and the specular color. Let's change the base color for a more vibrant copper to something like 252, 188, and 162. And a less saturated version of the same color for the specular color. There you have it. And finally, to control how sharp or rough the metal surface is, you can use the specular roughness parameter. The default value is 0.2, which results in this rough surface. If we set it to something lower like 0.1, we get a much sharper metal surface. You normally control the specular roughness with a black and white texture to add a bit more variation to your shader and a bit more realism. In the next lesson, we talk extensively about the specular section of the standard surface shader. So in this video, we learned about the base section of the standard surface shader. See you in the next one to talk about the specular section.